Hello everyone. We are there. Listen to the full story now on the channel. We are starting a new story. My husband left me 3 months after our wedding, leaving me with nothing except debts and a broken heart. In desperation, I got a live-in job as a caregiver for a billionaire who is confined to a wheelchair. But on the very first night, I froze in shock at what I saw. If these stories are important to you, please subscribe. Your subscription means more to me than you can imagine. It is motivation. It is the reason I continue telling these stories. And write in the comments where you are watching from. Now let's begin. The cafe on Maley Prospect was narrow and cozy. The air was thick with the aroma of espresso and fresh pastries. Soft jazz was playing from the speakers. Evelina Belova had not even taken 2 steps toward the table when Arseny Frolov lifted his eyes from his untouched coffee and said, "We need to talk." Her heart sank. His voice was even, rehearsed. He hadn't touched his drink. That should have been the first warning. Arseny never let his coffee go cold. She still sat down. Her palms were sweating on her bag. What happened? Is it about the apartment? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Not to give her a gift, but to take something back. "I can't be married to you, Evelina," he said. 8 words, just like that. 8 words that cut through her sharper than any scalpel she had ever held in her 5 years working as a nurse. She felt them get stuck somewhere under her ribs. A wound that didn't bleed, but also wouldn't close. "What?" she whispered. He leaned back in his chair, and she saw something change in his face. Relaxation. Liberation. As if the burden of honesty had finally been lifted from him. His shoulders dropped, his jaw loosened. He looked like a man who had just put down something he had been carrying for too long. "It's not about you," he said. "We're just moving in different directions. I've made important connections." He paused, and she saw uncertainty in his eyes. "Smizana Kulish and we understand each other in a way I never understood before." Smizana Kulish. The name fell between them like a stone thrown into still water. Smizana Kulish, the daughter of Grigory Kulish, a venture capitalist who owned half of St. Petersburg's tech startups. A woman Arseny had met at a business dinner 3 months after the wedding. A woman he had told Evelina not to worry about. "You're leaving me for her?" "It's not like that," he said, although it was exactly like that. "It will be better for both of us. You deserve someone simpler." She looked at him, trying to understand how the man she had married, the man she had stood beside in St. Andrew's Cathedral just 3 months ago, could erase her so easily. Then he added, "And the ring, it's a family heirloom." Evelina looked at her hand. The gold ring shimmered in the cafe light. She didn't love it for its value, but because it meant that she, a girl who had grown up in a series of foster families across the Leningrad region, had finally been chosen. She took off the ring. Her hands were shaking, but she did it. Carefully, she placed it on the table between them, next to his cold coffee, and said, "Thank you for your honesty." Then she stood up and left. Straight past the glass doors, past a couple sharing a honey cake, past curious eyes trying to understand what had just happened. She didn't run. She didn't look back. She walked with her chin high and her back straight, because she had learned long ago, the world will devour you alive if you let it see your blood. Only when she turned the corner onto Middle Prospect did the tears finally come. Hot and silent, running down her face as she walked, because she couldn't allow herself to stop, couldn't allow anyone to see her fall apart. She walked for 20 minutes, maybe more, clutching her bag to her chest, her breathing uneven, until she reached the home they called theirs. She didn't go in that night, nor the next day. She couldn't bear the silence, the half-packed boxes she hadn't noticed he was preparing, the wedding photo still hanging on the wall like a lie she had told herself. 3 days later, she finally returned. The key turned in the lock with a familiar sound. Her things stood in signed suitcases by the door, clothes, books, her grandmother's icons. Everything carefully packed, as if she had been returned to sender. Not by Arseny. It must have been his mother, Antonina Frolova, who had never approved of a nurse for her son, the same woman who kissed Evelina on both cheeks at the wedding and whispered, "Welcome to the family," in a voice that meant the opposite. Evelina sat on the floor beside the bags. The rent was in Arseny's name. Every ruble she had saved had gone into the wedding. She had less than 1,000 rubles left and a full week until her salary. That's when she called her adoptive mother. Alevtina Belova answered on the third ring, her voice warm and calm. "Evelina, my little one, where have you been?" She couldn't speak. A sob caught in her throat. That was enough. An hour later, she was curled up on the worn-out sofa in Alevtina's cramped apartment on the outskirts of the city, in a district where snow lay in dirty piles and trams rumbled day and night. She held a trembling cup of tea while the woman who raised her stroked her hair, just like she used to when Evelina was 13 and broken from another failed attempt at fitting into a family. Alevtina didn't ask questions. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't mention how she had frowned when Evelina announced her engagement, how she had asked, "Are you sure, my little one?" without judgment, only worry. She simply draped a thick wool blanket over Evelina's legs and said, "Stay as long as you need, do you hear me? I have space. And you don't owe anyone anything." That night, Evelina didn't sleep. She lay on the old folding sofa in the living room, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of that conversation with Arseny. His calmness. The way he didn't hesitate. The way he said simpler, like it was a gift he was giving her. As if she should be grateful for being gently rejected. Did he ever truly love her, or was she just a temporary replacement, someone to warm his bed, cook his food, and polish his ego until someone with a name like Kulish came along? By dawn, the pain had dulled into something heavier, something like shame. She was 27. Heartbroken. Almost homeless. Humiliated. At noon, she showered, put on her best uniform, and went back to the hospital as if nothing had happened. Her colleagues smiled. Some asked about Arseny, about the new apartment they were looking at, about the future she had spoken about so brightly just weeks ago. She smiled back. Nodded. Lied. Because telling the truth felt like it would tear her apart again. But when she changed into her scrubs and checked her assigned patients, she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't stay here forever, not in this city, not with these memories. Not while Arseny Frolov and Snezana Kulish were raising glasses of champagne to their bright, aligned future somewhere across the Neva. Not while she had nowhere to go and nothing left to lose. 3 days passed, 3 long, exhausting days. At work she kept functioning, trying not to let her soul fall apart. She smiled when asked about her marriage. Said Arseny was on a business trip. Said everything was fine. She said too much. But on the third day, while checking a patient system in room 8, Rima Vasilchuk, the senior nurse, a sharp woman who tolerated no nonsense, with a heart buried under layers of Soviet pragmatism, poked her head into the door and said, "Are you still looking for a miracle escape from this place?" Evelina blinked. "What?" Rima motioned her into the hallway and lowered her voice, glancing around to make sure no one heard. "Remember Lily from neurology? She took a private live-in care job a month ago. High pay. But she quit last week, couldn't handle the patient." "What patient?" Rima raised an eyebrow. "A wealthy tech magnate. Paralyzed. Lives on Krestovsky Island, in one of those houses that make you wonder who even builds them. They say he's a nightmare." Evelina hesitated. "I'm not a caregiver." "You're a nurse with 5 years of experience," Rima cut in. "You're more qualified than half the people they hire. And trust me, this man drives most of them away in under 2 weeks." She paused, studying Evelina like she could see through everything. "You're stubborn. That might work in your favor." Evelina almost laughed. She wasn't even sure she had stubbornness left. Everything inside her felt cracked, held together only by routine and the desperate need to keep moving. But something in Rima's words, escape, echoed too loudly. You have a contact? She asked. 10 minutes later, Rima handed her a small card with a name written in sharp, elegant handwriting. Uliana Savchenko, estate manager. And a phone number underneath. Evelina waited until midnight to call. She stood in the yard of Alevtina's home, breathing in the cold October air. The phone trembled in her hand. A stray cat watched her from the fence, eyes glowing in the dim light. Uliana answered on the second ring. Yes? This is Evelina Frolova, she said, then corrected herself. Belova. She wasn't Frolova anymore, was she? I was told there's a live-in caregiver position available. A pause long enough that she thought the call had ended. Come for an interview tomorrow at 9 a.m. Yes, I will. Bring your documents and references. Address will be sent by message. Don't be late. The line cut. At 5 a.m., Evelina took the earliest minibus from her mother's district, transferred to the metro at Prospect Veteranov, rode the blue line north until the city began to change. Stations became cleaner. Crowds thinner. Advertisements shifted from furniture and phones to luxury watches and private banks. By the time she stepped onto Krestovsky Island, the world had completely transformed. The final kilometer she walked on foot because she couldn't afford a taxi. The houses here weren't houses, they were mansions, fortresses of glass and stone behind iron gates, each larger than the last. This was where St. Petersburg's wealth disappeared from view. Morning light hit the neighboring estate windows, flashing sharp, blinding reflections. The gates opened as she approached. For a moment, she wanted to turn back. Her heart was pounding in her throat. What was she doing here? A nurse from the outskirts. A foster child who never belonged anywhere. Walking into a world built to exclude people like her. It was already too late. Uliana Savchenko met her at the main entrance. A woman over 60, thin as wire, hair pulled back tightly, wearing a dark blue suit without a single wrinkle. She looked Evelina over with the precision of someone who had either worked in military intelligence or high-end hospitality. Her gaze lingered on Evelina's worn coat and the scuffed shoes she hadn't had time to replace. You're early, she said. I didn't want to be late. Good. Follow me. The interview was brief. Uliana skimmed her resume, asked 4 questions, didn't smile once, and finally said. The position is yours, Miss Belova. Conditions are simple, 24/7 availability. 2 days off per month. No guests. Medical knowledge required. Confidentiality is non-negotiable. She placed a folder on the table. Your patient is a difficult man. You will live on the 2nd floor, near his apartment. Food and accommodation are included. Salary is 120,000 rubles per month, plus bonuses depending on his condition. Evelina tried not to react. She gripped the armrests of the chair to stop herself from laughing in relief. It was more than 3 times what she earned at the hospital. She could pay off her small debts. She could help Alevtina with rent. She could start over. She had no plan. She had nothing except an overpacked bag and a bleeding heart. Yes, she said without hesitation. Uliana handed her the contract. Read it by tomorrow. Your patient is Mr. Tikhon Krupin. At that moment, the name meant nothing to her. Soon, it would mean everything. The next morning, Evelina stood in front of his door, folder in hand, her heart hammering against her ribs. The corridor was silent, thick carpet swallowing every step. Everything in this house was polished and cold. Stone floors. Sharp lines. Expensive silence. Icons hung in the corners where Orthodox tradition demanded them, but they looked like decorations rather than prayers. Gold and gilding without a single lit candle. The air smelled of lemon polish and something else, something clinical, hidden underneath. Uliana stood beside her, holding a tablet against her chest. Are you sure you want this? She asked, not looking at her. I signed the contract. That's not what I asked. Evelina swallowed. Yes. Uliana knocked twice and opened the door without waiting for a response. The room was enormous. Too large for one person. High ceilings. Glass walls opening onto a line of birch and pine trees. Morning light sliding across pale parquet floors. A fireplace stood cold against one wall. On its mantel was a single photograph, too far for her to see clearly. It felt less like a bedroom and more like a throne room built for a ghost. He was by the window in an elegant black wheelchair, his back to them. "Mr. Krupin," Uliana said clearly. "Your new caregiver has arrived. Evelina Belova." He didn't turn immediately. He simply sat there, slowly tapping his fingers on the armrest. A rhythm she would later learn meant he was thinking, evaluating, deciding something she couldn't see. Then finally, he turned. Evelina's breath caught. She didn't know what she had expected. An older man, perhaps. Fragile. Broken in body and spirit. But Tikhon Krupin was young, 34 according to his file, tall even-seated, with short dark hair, sharp features, and eyes the color of winter ice over the Neva. Yet there was exhaustion in him. A pale face, a lean frame. And something in his expression that warned her immediately. He looked at her like she had already disappointed him. "So," he said, voice low and cutting. "They sent another one." Evelina opened her mouth, but he cut her off. "What's the bet this time, Uliana? A week? 10 days? Uliana didn't respond. She simply said, "I'll leave you to get acquainted," and closed the door behind her. The sound clicked softly, like a lock sealing a cell. Silence stretched between them. A clock ticked somewhere in the house. A floorboard creaked. "I'm not here to make bets," Evelina said finally. "I'm just here to do my job." He rolled his wheelchair a few feet closer, studying her like a piece of art he didn't particularly like. His eyes moved from her face to her uniform to the folder in her hands, measuring, cataloging, dismissing. "And what job do you think that is?" "Medication. Physiotherapy. Monitoring your vitals. Supporting rehabilitation." He let out a humorless snort. "You forgot the part where you nod sympathetically until I magically start walking again. That's usually everyone's favorite part." Evelina didn't flinch. She had seen this before, men who had lost control over their bodies trying desperately to control anything else, using words as weapons. "I'm not here to pity you," she said. He tilted his head slightly. "Oh, that's new. Most of them break by day 3. Maybe you'll surprise me." "Maybe," she said. But the faint curve at the corner of his mouth made it clear he didn't believe a single word. He turned back toward the window, dismissing her. "We'll see how long this lasts." The day passed in tense silence. Evelina administered medication, reviewed the physiotherapy plan, and took notes. Tikhon continued making cutting remarks, testing her, pushing her, commenting on her handwriting, questioning her qualifications, asking whether she had even finished any medical school at all. She didn't react. She had worked with veterans who had lost limbs, with teenagers screaming in pain during injections, with mothers crying under the effects of morphine. Tikhon Krupin wasn't going to intimidate her. That evening, when she was preparing his room for the night, adjusting pillows, checking the call button, making sure water was within reach, he suddenly said, "You're not what I expected." She looked up from the drawer where she was arranging medication. "No. You didn't ask about the accident." She considered her answer. "I decided you would tell me if you wanted to." Another pause. Another moment of surprise. Something flickered in his eyes. Not warmth, but something close to recognition. "It was a ski trip," he finally said. "Alone. I lost control on a ridge in the Kibani Mountains. I woke up in a helicopter. I haven't walked without support since." Evelina nodded. "Thank you for telling me." He stared at her for a long time. The clock ticked. Outside, wind moved through the birch trees, casting shifting shadows across the floor. Why did you take this job? He asked. I needed it. Not the money, his voice sharpened. This job. You could have taken any private caregiving position in the city. Why this house? She met his gaze. Something inside her cracked, just slightly. Because I was lied to, she said. Because I know what it feels like to be thrown away. His expression shifted for a second, like a crack in a wall that wasn't supposed to be there. A glimpse of something human under the ice. Then it was gone. Smoothed over. Locked away. He turned back toward the window. Don't get attached, he said. I don't know how to be grateful. And I don't know how to be a friend. Fine, Evelina replied. I'm not under any illusions. He said nothing after that, but he didn't dismiss her. And when she left the room that night, closing the door softly behind her, she heard him exhale. A long, slow breath, like a man who had been holding something in for too long. It happened on the 5th night. She wasn't supposed to be awake. Her shift ended at 11 p.m., and she was in her room, a small but comfortable space on the 2nd floor overlooking the garden. She tried reading, tried sleeping, tried drowning out the voice in her head repeating Arseni's words. Someone simpler. You deserve someone simpler. But the wind outside howled past midnight, shaking the windows like an unsettled ghost unsure whether to enter or stay outside. She got up to close the blinds, and noticed a light in the west wing. The gym. Tikhon rarely allowed anyone in there. She had only been once, on her first day, inventorying equipment, rows of rehabilitation machines, parallel bars, weights, all designed to rebuild a body that had forgotten how. At first, she ignored it. Told herself he probably fell asleep watching something. Told herself it wasn't her business. Told herself to go back to bed. But something pulled her anyway. A quiet instinct. The same feeling she had as a child, lying awake in unfamiliar foster homes, knowing something was wrong before she could name it. She threw on a sweater, walked down the silent corridor, and opened the gym door just enough to look inside. And what she saw made everything inside her freeze. Tikhon Krupin was standing. Not fully. Not without support. He was gripping the parallel bars, arms trembling with effort. Sweat ran down his temples. His face was twisted in strain. His legs shook beneath him. Every muscle was taut. Veins stood out along his forearms. But he was doing it. Slowly. Relentlessly. Step by agonizing step. His jaw was clenched so tightly she could see the muscle jumping in his cheek. His breathing came in broken, strained gasps. His whole body trembled under the effort of forcing itself upright, forcing legs to do what they were made for, but had forgotten. Evelina's breath caught. At first, he didn't notice her. He was too focused, too deep in battle with his own body. She watched him take one step, then another. His left leg dragged slightly, and he cursed under his breath, low, furious words she couldn't hear. Then a faint creak betrayed her. He turned. Saw her. And his expression shifted instantly, from effort to something raw. Something that might have been fear, before it hardened into anger. What the hell are you doing here? He snapped. The voice cut through the silence like shattered glass. I heard something. I thought. Get out, he said, voice like ice and fire at once. Now. She didn't move. Not because she was frozen, but because something inside her had already changed. She was looking at a man the world had written off. Doctors. Partners. Everyone. And he refused to stay written off. He fought in the dark, alone, because he was too proud to let anyone see him struggle. He wasn't hopeless. He wasn't finished. He was hiding progress. Why? She asked quietly, stepping into the room. The door clicked shut behind her. Why are you hiding this? His grip tightened on the bars. Knuckles turning white. His body shaking harder now, not just from effort, but from restraint. Because the moment people see progress, they start expecting miracles. That's not how healing works. He gave a bitter laugh. It broke halfway through. No, he said. But that's how disappointment works. I've seen it before. People leaving the moment they realize I'm not going to magically stand up and become who I was. My partners. My friends. The woman who was supposed to become my wife. His voice cracked on the last words. I don't want to go through that again. So you pretend there's nothing left, Evelina said softly. That you've given up. His jaw tightened. You don't understand. Evelina stepped closer carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. She had done this before in the hospital, with patients who lashed out because they were scared, because they were lonely, because they didn't know how to ask for help. Maybe I do understand. His eyes locked onto hers, furious, uncertain, something vulnerable flickering behind the anger. I won't tell anyone, she said. But if you let me help you, really help you, we can work towards something better. You don't have to do this alone. Why? He demanded, his voice rough now, stripped of its usual polish. Why do you care? You've been here 5 days. You don't know me. I was cruel to you. So why? She thought of Arsini, of how he looked at her in that cafe like something disposable. Of years believing she wasn't enough, didn't deserve love, that she would always be the girl nobody chose. Because I know what it's like, she said quietly. When your future gets taken from you, and you still have to smile through the broken pieces. He stared at her, breathing heavily. Sweat glistened on his skin. His hands were shaking uncontrollably now, his legs threatening to give out. She thought he would shout again. Order her out. Threaten to fire her. She thought he would retreat behind the ice wall he always built. Instead, he slowly lowered himself back into the wheelchair, silent, exhausted. The chair creaked under his weight. He sat there for a long moment, head bowed, chest rising and falling. Finally, he muttered. Fine. Her heart jumped. We keep this between us, he added, lifting his gaze. His eyes were red, strained. No one knows. Not Eliana, not the doctors, no one. I understand. And you follow my instructions. If I say stop, we stop. If I say go, you help. No questions. No arguments. Agreed? He studied her for a long moment, eyes still sharp, but something had shifted behind them. Something unspoken passed between them, understanding, a kind of trust neither of them expected. You're not like the others, he finally said. She shrugged, though her heart was still pounding. I'm not trying to be. He almost smiled. Almost. It appeared, and disappeared so quickly she could have imagined it. Tomorrow, he said. 6 a.m. Don't be late. I won't. She turned to leave, hand already on the door, and heard his voice behind her, lower now, almost human. Evelina. She looked back. Thank you. She nodded once, then slipped out into the corridor, closing the door softly behind her. She stood there for a moment, leaning against the wall, her heart still racing, and allowed herself to breathe. She didn't know it yet. That night in the gym was only the beginning. The secret sessions would lead to something bigger, something that would connect her broken marriage to his stolen future. Something that would force them both to face the truth about who had set them up to fail. And the truth was coming closer. And it had a name she already knew too well. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe.